It feels like none of these things should be controversial. Let's not ban books. I don't know.
You know what? Great points.
Classic
As always.
former English teacher thinking we shouldn't ban books. I think I have Fahrenheit 450. Oh my God, I have Fahrenheit 451 within my arm's reach of me right now.
And I have white fragility like somewhere over here.
Well, the federal government just defunded this entire podcast, which is a real bummer. Welcome to New Hampshire Has Issues, a podcast that dares to ask, can I just put the TV on as childcare? What do you think, Kenz? What's your tagline?
Welcome to New Hampshire Has Issues, the podcast where we dare to ask why it costs more than college tuition to send your kid to daycare or childcare.
That's painfully an excellent one, Kenz. Very, very good. So I am your host, Liz Canada, and joining me today is Kenz Nicholson, who is the Senior Director of Moms Rising New Hampshire. Welcome, Kenz. Thank you for being here.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I love coming on your podcast, Liz.
I love having you here. It's so wonderful. Talking about childcare, talking about books.
Talking about how moms have power.
Moms have a significant amount of power. You know this. I go to a CrossFit gym. First rule of CrossFit is you always talk about it, that you go to a CrossFit gym. And a lot of the people who work out there are moms. And whenever they talk to me about, they know that I work in sort of policy state house world, and they ask how to get involved. I'm always like, you should call Kenz. Like, you should call her and be part of. Yeah.
Thanks, Liz.
I nudge them in your direction because the thing that unifies them, because they might have differing opinions, is that they are strong moms, physically, emotionally, that's who they are. So can you tell me, just in a few sentences, tell me a little bit about Moms Rising New Hampshire. What do you all do?
Yeah. What don't we do is a better question. We take
just
care
like
of
moms.
one another.
What don't we do?
Yeah, we are doing it all with duct tape and granola bars in our purse, but we're a community of moms who do support one another, and maybe in some ways that you don't expect. Like we help each other speak out in front of our lawmakers and our decision makers, whether that be through giving testimony or sharing our stories or writing pieces for our papers or social media. But it also means supporting one another when someone is moving or helping to find services for someone in a certain area. Moms Rising is a community of moms who want to make New Hampshire and the country a better place for moms and our families. And it's anybody who's ever had a mom or loved a mom. We're inclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but really, we are moms who are just trying to lift up what real motherhood looks like and come up with real and innovative and new policy solutions to sort of bring it back to how it should be, which is that moms and families are supported in every way.
So let's start with a simple question. How easy is it to find childcare in New Hampshire?
Easy if you are the richest, most well-connected person whose mom owns a childcare center and a baby happens to be leaving that week. For the rest of us, however,
so that for that person, simple.
Really good.
Okay.
Yes. But for the rest of the Granite State, very difficult.
Yep.
I think something like 50% of New Hampshire people now live in a childcare desert, which means they don't have easy access to affordable quality childcare. That's a huge problem for people who need childcare to work and go to school and do many things.
A childcare desert.
If this is one you haven't heard before.
I have to be honest, I have not heard that phrase before. It sounds horrible.
Honestly, kind of is. And when you start thinking about the different types of deserts that exist, right? Like food deserts, maternal health deserts, and you start overlapping them
in the ranking of horrible deserts. Yes,
right.
Maternal health desert. Right.
Yeah. You didn't think coming to New Hampshire, you'd be living in a desert. Maybe not climate-wise. It is raining right now. But there aren't enough childcare slots for the amount of children here at all. There's not enough food. There's not enough maternal health care. So that kind of describes what a desert is. You just can't get access to it in an affordable, quality way that meets the needs of your family. And so, welcome to New Hampshire, where we charge as much for childcare as we do in-state college tuition. And if you can find it, you're one of the lucky few.
So childcare slots, I think about public schools, right? Public school, you have a neighborhood school, they take every student in their community, it's required, right? To take every student in their community. The town and the community helps support the schools so that students can go there. Childcare is obviously not the same. Like, there are not unlimited spots for young people. So, like, how do you even find out if there is a spot available? Like, how does this work for just a regular person looking for childcare for their kid?
I think most of the time, folks are probably thinking about where they need to commute to work, what's in their communities, and then really the ultimate decision-making factor for them probably comes down to who actually does have a slot for them, and whether they can afford it, which, again, both things could be really challenging for families right now. And so, frankly, I don't know where they're finding it. And a lot of times I think it comes down to luck and being on wait lists for really long times.
So I'm a step parent to the two boys, right? Like, my wife, Molly, she's their biological mom. And I met the boys when they were 5 and 4. So I entered their lives kind of after the, quote unquote, childcare issue had really been a part of, my wife's life. I had the rude awakening of how early you have to start looking for summer camps. We register them in January, right? Like, that's the thing that you have to start planning for. I had no idea. I thought you register for summer camp near the summer. Not the case. And I feel like childcare is sort of similar. I hear about my friends who have to, like, hold a spot years in advance.
I know some of our colleagues even who are telling their childcare providers that they're pregnant before they even tell their families that they're pregnant because they are so worried about finding a slot.
Oh my God.
Right? I'm really lucky to work in a field that is flexible and that would allow me to have my baby with me. But imagine if you work in a field, and many people do, where you can't have your baby with you and you really do need to go back to work and you can't have your baby. Yeah, your childcare provider might be the first person you tell when wait lists are sometimes 1.5 to 2 years long, which isn't unheard of, actually.
What?
We know that there's a certain level of kids under the age of 5 who we expect will likely need some sort of childcare because one or both of their parents are working in New Hampshire.
Right.
And so we also know that there's only a set number of slots available for childcare. And there's a lot of reasons why these two things interact and how they interact. And one of the main kind of causes here kind of comes down to where the money for childcare ultimately comes from. And when you think about the money that's going into childcare, really, mostly the money that goes into a childcare comes from parents. It comes from the tuition that they're paying weekly for their kids to be there. There is not enough investment, in my opinion, that comes down from the federal government for childcare. It's just not enough. And the funds that come down are limited in what we can do with them. And when you look across the country at childcare policy, we stand out as being one of the states that invests the least in childcare, right? And many other states do invest on the state level in some way in their childcare workforce, or if it's on, helping families afford it a little bit better than we do. We just don't invest anything at the state level, and what we get from the feds isn't enough.
So the cost of childcare, like the actual tuition cost, is so significant, it falls on the families themselves.
There might be some state dollars or some federal dollars. That's really all that goes in. And then everything that comes out, you've got to pay the teachers on the other side of that, the professionals who are providing the care for kids. And we know, especially living in a really expensive area of the country, what a livable wage actually looks like. But then those childcare providers and the centers themselves, right, also have to pay all their bills, keep the lights on. Sometimes they provide food. Another issue is like really expensive insurance, right? And so the math just doesn't math there when the only money coming in is from parents. And the only way to increase your quality or pay your teachers better or open more classrooms, there's just not enough money coming in to make it so that the professionals are paid a decent wage, and it doesn't come off the backs of parents paying so much.
I had the extreme benefit of living with my grandmother and great-grandmother, like my mom's mom and grandmother. We all lived in 1-2 family household. So we always had someone there. What a great thing for me as like the grandkid who got to live with my grandmother and great-grandmother. But I don't feel like a lot of people can do that now. Like that was back in the 1980s, 19 at the beginning.
Back in the 1900s, for those of you.
Throwback to the 1900s.
Whoa.
We have the boys. Their grandparents all work, right? Like my parents still work full time. Both of them still work full time. So what is it like in New Hampshire for families? Do people live near their parents still? Do they have to find private childcare? Like, what is the breakdown in New Hampshire for families looking for childcare supports?
From the people that I know who are utilizing childcare, and even when my kids are 11 and 8 now, so they haven't needed childcare for quite some time, but we were also a sort of sandwich generation family where I relied on my parents to help do sort of, fragmented care because I could only afford to bring my kids both times they were in childcare 2 to 3 max days a week because it was so expensive. And so what I would do is I would sort of come up with an arrangement with my boss. And I've worked in child and family advocacy my entire career. Mm-hmm. And so I've worked with some really amazing, flexible people. And so I recognize the privilege that is like having that flexibility. This isn't possible for everybody, but I would, maybe go into the office on Monday through Thursday and have my mom help on Monday and Wednesday.
Right.
And then my kiddo would go to daycare on Tuesday, Thursday. And then I would work from home on Friday. And I think many parents are sort of cobbling together many different types of care. I've also seen moms just like at their wits' end being like, I have to hire a nanny. Do you want to do a nanny share with me? I even recently worked with some local moms whose childcare was being pulled out from underneath them with almost no notice. They got a 50% increase in their tuition because the owner of the business was he wasn't a childcare professional and he was really struggling. And so he essentially with 2 weeks notice said either pay increased tuition or we're going to close down. And what these moms did, which again, you shouldn't have to do this, and this is not a solution I recommend, but they banded together and with the help of some really well-connected people in our community, they actually took over this childcare and started their own business. And now, so it sounds like families are cobbling together care or buying their own daycares, which do not recommend. Or
because that's not available for everybody. Not everyone can buy a business to be able to put it together.
Frankly, listen, Liz, I love babies like more than the next person, but I know that I'm not the right person to be a childcare teacher or a childcare professional or to be with kiddos like for long periods of time, even my own kids.
I was a high school, I have a background in secondary education English. So I do really well with like teaching high schoolers, working with high schoolers. And they used to make fun of me. They're like, you would never hack it with the little kids. I'm like, no, I would not. I could not handle tiny people in a professional way like that, right? Like for the boys, of course, there's something different, but like, it's so different to have to be in charge of little ones in that way to help them grow up and learn things. And I wouldn't know what I'm doing.
What ends up happening, right, is more often than not, women and moms are leaving the workforce to take care of their kids. And I don't say always, but often it's moms. What I'm thinking about is what that does to that mom. And I don't just mean, oh, she can't go to work now. That's really hard, but also for her career trajectory and lifetime earnings.
Right.
And I know that not all of us desire to work, but there are some people who do want to work, right? And who want to go and who need to be there for the financial security of their families. And stepping out of the workforce isn't always feasible. And what does that do to our state when those folks aren't working?
Right, because stepping out of the workforce is, yes, watching your child, and we all love our children, and that's so important. But it's also, wages, of course, which is the balance with childcare.
Yep.
And then when you re-enter the workforce at some point, you explain, well, I was out of the workforce for a while. Here's why. I think there must be some sort of stigma still for people about people who have left the workforce to care for their children. Are they going to have another child? I don't know. I feel like that's so complicated. And it does. It lands mostly, often, on the moms. On the women.
And why? Is it because the jobs that the moms take on are more flexible or make less money, or that they are just the ones who say, I can do this? I'm not really sure what, of course I'm not in their homes, but that's a really tough decision to have to make. And it's one that is avoidable by treating childcare like the public good it is, just like the way that we treat roads. The things that let people work we pay for as a public good, like roads, right? Like schools, like traffic lights. I'm having really bad time thinking of examples right now, like firefighters, right? Like
all the things that let you just live your day-to-day life that
Yes.
makes life easier for you.
Yes.
Not
And
even easier,
childcare is one of those
livable,
things.
makes life
Yes.
livable for you.
Exactly.
Right. Childcare
Crisis.
gives the families the ability to make the decision not out of maybe panic or fear of, you know, financial loss or ramifications down the road or feeling trapped in the situation, but lets them make the choice for themselves if there's childcare choices that are out there, theoretically.
Right. But I think it's so unaffordable for families. I know we talked about this before, but the New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute has done a ton of work and data collection around childcare and what that looks like in New Hampshire. And if we were to assume that childcare should be a max 7% of what you're spending for the month, then a family should be earning about $400,000 a month. Excuse me. Could you imagine? Holy moly. Let's go back.
Try it again. Rewind the tape.
Rewind. Woo! So if a family were going to be spending 7% of their income on childcare, they'd have to be making about $400,000 a year for that to be considered affordable under the federal guidelines.
Kenz, you have told me this before because we did talk. We had, you know, we had a little chit chat about childcare before, a pre-chat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you said that, and it's not that I didn't believe you.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I want to fact check things and go and check. And I couldn't find the report. So I reached out literally to Phil from the New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute. It's like, Phil, quick question. Send him an email. Quick question. I heard this thing. And Kenz, I am not joking. I will show you the timestamps. Within 4 minutes, he responded with the report, with it highlighted. And he's like, yeah, $400,000 a year if you're assuming 7% of their income to be able to pay for childcare.
Yeah.
Based on the cost. Right. That is, first of all, shout out New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute. But also that's bonkers expensive. That's it. That is absolutely wild how much money.
Raise your hand if you're making $400,000 a year, friends.
We'll all wait. We'll just sit here and wait for everybody. I'm sure there are people. Of course there are people who make that much money, but it's not me. It's not our household. It's not your household.
It's not. And I know there are people out there who are not making as much money as we are. So how are they able to do it? How are they able to pull it off? We know that the cost for infant care is like $15,000 a year, which is more than in-state tuition for college. I don't even know where you come up with that kind of money.
Well, and I hear friends who have kids in childcare now who are so looking forward to their kids starting in public school. Because it's like, oh my God, do you know how much money I'm not going to have to spend?
Yes.
It's almost like a countdown. Not that they don't love their childcare placement. Like they love where they send their kiddo.
Yeah.
But it's just so much money that they have to spend.
Shout out to all the moms who ever did the math when when their baby was in childcare and they're like, wait, when is my kid going to go into kindergarten? Because I was one of the moms who was like, shoot, I didn't plan this pregnancy. I didn't time it right, because if I had just gotten pregnant like 3 months earlier, my kid would be cut off a year sooner and then I'd have a year less of childcare. Shout out to the moms who have done that math, because that September cutoff can really mess you up. And it could cost another $15,000. And you're like, what if my baby had just been born a day earlier?
That is like the word problem in math where you can't even compute it. It's just like your brain just short circuits of how you have to figure out your future life to be able to pay for the childcare for the extra year. Oh my God, that's a lot, Kenz. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, no wonder it's not working, right? Yeah.
To put it mildly.
Crisis levels here.
So I've heard this phrase quite a bit. We're in a childcare crisis. You said we're in a childcare desert. These are all big, scary words. Small, scary words, but scary words. What is it? What does it mean to be in a childcare crisis?
Well, not to be dramatic, but I think it means
like... Oh, be dramatic. I love theater.
All right. Well, 50% of us, when 50% of the people who need childcare can't find it, like think about if you were to go to the grocery store and half the people in there needed eggs. This has definitely never happened in New England before, or milk the night before a snowstorm, and there wasn't any. 50% of the people there would be like really struggling to figure out how they were going to survive a New Hampshire snowstorm. We simply do not have the amount of childcare providers and centers to have the kids that are here in New Hampshire. And New Hampshire is an aging state. People are not coming to New Hampshire moving to New Hampshire. Young folks aren't moving to New Hampshire anymore. I have to wonder, is it because New Hampshire families and young people can't find childcare? And to me, that screams crisis when people are leaving the state or not coming here because of the crappy childcare situation that they... I monitored myself.
Yeah, that was very good. It was good.
Yeah.
We'll pivot.
Yep. I see social media all the time of moms like talking about the lack of access to childcare and saying, we're going to have to move, or I'm going to take a different job, or, the plans are going to change. And if it were a couple of families experiencing that, I could see it just being like a challenge. But to me, the levels that we're at, it's a crisis. You could be waiting 18 months for a slot for a childcare center that you really love and never get on it.
And then what do? You're like, okay, job, I want to work for you, but I won't know for 18 months. So if you can just hold that spot for me.
Yeah. And
this
has
to do.
Right. It has implications on all of our communities.
Is there like a magical childcare place in the state that has plenty of spaces and is there like a secret place in the state, or is this like an issue across the entire state?
I would love to know. If there's a unicorn out there, you know where to find me. But no, unfortunately, I think this problem is not unique to centers near us. We hear from folks up in the North Country. Frankly, we've lost a lot of childcare providers too. And so the system is only becoming more and more strained. I've heard of police, for example, moving to a rural community in New Hampshire and trying to get jobs as police in those communities to help bring a workforce back to rural communities. But when they get there, they find out that there's no childcare for their kids. If we want police officers, we want firefighters, we need people to do essential jobs, we also have to have places for their kids to go. It affects them too.
It affects everyone.
Yeah. I mean, it affects all of us.
Yeah, it affects everybody. How does the state of New Hampshire help when it comes to childcare? Can the state of New Hampshire do anything about this?
Absolutely. We were talking about this at the top of the hour, where my opinion that childcare is a public good. In just the same way that we treat other public goods like roads and schools, we could be managing childcare the same way, right? We know that childcare is a tool to help people get to work. And so similarly, if we can invest and support childcare, we can help those folks get to work and boost our economy. And so one of the ways that we can do that is through our state's childcare scholarship program. It helps folks on the lower income spectrum access childcare scholarships. And that matters, right? Because many families start their families young, right? And you're starting out in your career, you're not necessarily making $400,000 a year. Who knew?
Ever?
Right?
I don't
Let me
think
know
so.
if you get there.
No.
Yeah. But so they're starting out in their careers.
One too many zeros in that one.
For real. And the childcare scholarship helps pay for the kiddo to go to childcare. But the thing about our childcare scholarship program is it actually doesn't pay the cost, like the full cost to provide that care to the childcare provider. So that's issue number one. There's like a nexus between the amount the state gives for the childcare scholarship program, what it costs to have that slot, and what the family can afford, right? Because sometimes there's like, if the provider charges more than what the state pays, then they charge the parent that difference. And parents, they're using the childcare scholarship because they sit on a lower income. And so that cost share isn't always affordable for families. Remember, we're supposed to be keeping it to 7% of family income. When we reach this place where the childcare scholarship isn't paying the true cost of what it costs to provide that care in a quality way, we start to see like the degradation of that care. Childcare providers stop accepting the scholarship, which means fewer and fewer childcare centers, because
they can choose to not accept
exactly.
it. I see.
And there's red tape that goes with the childcare scholarship program, right? There was actually a bill this year. Right. It was Senate Bill 243. It's still alive, but it is the House Health, Human Affairs and Elderly. What is the name of that committee?
It is House Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee. House HHS.
HHSEA got you, but maybe we could just like slice it down a little bit. And anyways.
A House committee that focuses on health and human services.
Yeah.
Yep.
They had this bill in front of their committee and they hadn't seen this bill before. The bill had hardly any opposition, very low cost. It had a lot of administrative fixes to red tape and barriers around the childcare scholarship system, including making it so that providers didn't have to jump through hoops to submit paperwork or get paid. And the House HHS committee voted to kill it completely on party lines. And again, it had no opposition.
This is a bill that passed the Senate. Was it
completely
unanimously?
Unanimously.
Okay, so the Senate.
Unanimously. Yes.
The Senate, which is, 16 Republicans, 8 Democrats, they passed this bill unanimously, sent it over to the House. And then the House, it's in the committee, and you're saying that there is a recommendation on party lines to stop this bill, to defeat it. And which, dare I ask, which party goes which way on this bill?
For whatever reason, the Republicans decided that they wanted to kill this bill, and some of the rhetoric I heard in that committee hearing was really problematic. I even heard one representative say, and I'm paraphrasing here, but why should New Hampshire be trying to fix childcare when we've got this mess going on with our schools? And it's
boy.
Right?
Okay. So just to reiterate, because I don't want someone to listen to this and be like, this podcast is hold on. The Senate passed it unanimously. All 24 of them passed it. And it got sort of mucked up in the House in this interesting debate.
Yes, on
but
party
it's not
lines.
over yet. We're recording this in early May, so it might have a vote before this episode goes live. There's a recommendation for the full House to say that they want to stop this bill. But it's a good bill and would be helpful for the childcare crisis. Actually,
there were only 2 bills around childcare this year, and this is the only one still standing. This is the only bill focused on addressing issues with our childcare crisis this year. And the House Health, Human Services, and Elderly Affairs Committee recommended to kill this bill. And that is really problematic when we are talking about the situation that we're in. Talk about out of touch. I know that we're talking a lot about money issues in New Hampshire right now. When we talk about a lot of the things that you and I care about have a significant return on investment, and childcare is a perfect example of when you invest those dollars early, what they bring back to you is 7-fold. We know that to be true for moms and families. And so for this bill that had a very low cost of, I think, $300,000 a year, pennies to the state of New Hampshire.
Wow.
When they're so desperate to find cuts. And again, I'm just assuming, I don't know, I'm just trying to put myself in their heads. I don't think that killing a bill that costs $300,000 a year makes a ton of sense when every mom and every family I know is asking for childcare solutions. And it's a return.
Just to be really clear, though, $300,000 a year for the state of New Hampshire, which is less than the $400,000 a year a household would have to make childcare affordable. Just the whole state, $300,000 a year.
$300,000 is unaffordable for New Hampshire to invest in long-term investment in childcare. But if you make $400,000 a year, you can afford childcare. What?
I mean, I agree that if you make $400,000 a year, you probably could afford childcare.
Then why can't New Hampshire?
Oh, boy. Okay. Wow. Wowie, wow.
That's
wild.
To say that was one meaningful bill that the legislature has its hands on this session. And there have been many bills in the past that have worked to address challenges with our childcare scholarship system. It doesn't just have to be support for our childcare scholarship system. We could actually invest in the workforce itself, because we know that, the difference between a childcare provider and a kindergarten teacher sometimes is literally no experience.
No change in experience, like they have the same background.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Many childcare providers have bachelor's and master's degrees in early childhood education.
Bless
but
them.
Wages.
Cannot emphasize enough how hard it is to educate young people, period, let alone the youngest of little people. Oof.
Yes. Full stop. And the cost to attain that education.
Right. To prepare people to become childcare professionals.
So, not only are they not getting the support that they need now, but we're also not paying them.
About $16 an hour is what a childcare professional on average makes.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Liz, but I've seen places like McDonald's with the signs out front that says now hiring $16 an hour. Some places are offering competitive or better wages than childcare. And so if you could go work at Target for the same or more money, I can imagine why it's a hard choice to stay in childcare when literally some of your peers who are kindergarten teachers are making thousands and thousands of dollars more a year than you. Love our kids. Being a childcare provider has got to be one of the hardest jobs out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yes, there are businesses that are offering more money for jobs that are difficult, right? Like working in a fast food restaurant is taxing on the body. Like there is a lot to that. It's exhausting in a different way. And childcare professionals being paid an average of $16 an hour compared to being a kindergarten teacher where you might make, I can't math it in my head, but probably $40,000 to $50,000 probably a year, which is different than $16 an hour.
And for folks who, are working in schools, they likely have access to things like, health insurance and retirement.
Exactly.
And
right.
A lot of times childcare providers and childcare centers are running on such thin margins that they can't offer things like that. And so again, it's like, who are the most likely population to be holding those jobs? And more often than not, it's women and moms. When I say crisis, I mean crisis for women and moms and our families and our economy and for it all.
Now, let me ask you, I heard the Trump administration is potentially going to offer $5,000 to have a baby.
Woo! Someone shoot off confetti guns.
Cue the confetti guns, $5,000 coming your way. Now, $5,000 is money. That is an amount of money. How good is that offer, would you say, when you think about like the childcare crisis and affordability in New Hampshire? Is that a solution to this issue that we face in New Hampshire?
Can I swear?
You can. I'll bleep you out. So you go. You swear as much as you want. I'm going to bleep you out.
No, Liz. No, it is not affordable. $5,000 doesn't even cover 4 months of infant care. It doesn't cover the birth, you leaving the hospital. No! $5,000 isn't enough for me to consider getting pregnant, just based off of what I know my body has gone through physically to carry 2 pregnancies. I wouldn't take $5,000 to go through that again. It's sheer lunacy to think that a one-time baby bonus is going to fix this challenge that we're facing.
So what I'm hearing you say is no.
It's going to be a no for me.
It's going to be a no on that one. Yep. Okay, so it's a no. Is there anything else the state of New Hampshire can do right now? May 2025, anything that New Hampshire can do?
I'm really not sure what New Hampshire or the federal government is going to do right now. Frankly, we need to look at the way that we have revenue in our state and where we prioritize where that revenue goes. Because I don't think that many of the cuts that we've made over the past few years have benefited us in the way that I think that a lot of folks thought they were going to. And what we're seeing now is a humongous cut that we're needing to make out of our state budget based off of the lack of revenue. And that is coming from the loss of wealth taxes on wealthy corporations and people. So what I think we need to be doing as people is we need to not let up in talking about all of the ways that these budgets are affecting us, whether that's about childcare or anything else. We need to stand up for it and be talking about it so that we can point and say, we've been telling you and we've been saying for years and years that this is a problem that we want you to address. So
you talk about like standing up and letting folks know about what's going on. That's something you did recently. You were at the State House speaking out in, I think, opposition, but also deep concern about what is not in the state budget. So I'm going to just roll the tape. Not that there's tape anymore in 2025. I'm going to roll the tape. Be kind, rewind to the state budget.
1900s.
Classic 1900 talk that we have here. So let me just roll the clip of you at the state budget hearing.
Moms, parents, and caregivers across New Hampshire are watching this budget process closely. I know because we're bringing it to them. We're making it more accessible, answering their questions, their concerns, hearing them. You may find me repetitive, but this is the people's house. And in the moms that I'm talking to, they don't feel heard. Because hearings like these happen during the middle of the workday with only 5 days' notice. that doesn't just shut families out of the process, it shuts out the very people that these decisions impact the most. And those decisions matter. They determine whether young families can afford to stay, move here, and build a future in New Hampshire. And it's not just about those families, it's about the future of our workforce and our economy in our communities. We urge you, prioritize funding for childcare, protect family resource centers, keep Medicaid strong, ensure public dollars stay in public schools. Moms are watching. Thank you.
I was sitting there listening to the testimony go on from our colleagues, our neighbors, our friends, talk about the many ways that this budget is going to impact them. And I hadn't planned on testifying, but I was sitting there thinking like, no, we can't. I'm getting tired of not saying anything, right? Because I think that folks are going to quote unquote do the right thing or just do.
And you mean lawmakers, that the lawmakers are going to do the right thing. 'Cause there were a lot of people in that room trying to do the right thing that day. Yeah.
That sort of practice of getting up and sharing your story is not new to me. And we can be personal for a moment if you want.
Go for it. Be personal.
I got into this work because I was a really young mom. I had my son when I was just 23 years old, just months after I graduated from college. I was starting out in my career. My partner and I we were renting an apartment, figuring life out, and we couldn't afford childcare. I didn't have paid leave. Yeah. I had a C-section and had to go back to work 3 and 4 weeks after having those C-sections. So when you ask about whether $5,000 is enough, it's not. Oof. But I was chatting with a friend of mine recently about, she brought back, a colleague of ours brought back a memory to me of when I had my son, when he was really little. He's 11 now, but bringing him to work because I had to. Not because he was a prop or anything like that, but because I literally did not have a choice. And I almost started sobbing in front of her because I didn't remember that. And it was so hard, so incredibly hard and isolating to be a young mom and to have it feel like every single obstacle is everything is against you. Everything is a fight. Nothing makes sense. As the senior director of Moms Rising in New Hampshire, I feel incredibly proud and I feel like I could throw up every time I get up at that pulpit and share stories, because that's what I needed, right? I needed someone who was going to share my story and tell them how hard it is to be a mom, and how the decisions that they make in those 2 rooms up in Concord, New Hampshire, seriously affect, to my very core, my health as a person, as a mom.
Yeah.
And I want to bring this sort of feeling of our voices have collective power to the families, because I've actually seen it have an impact. And I know that our episode today maybe has been a little bit on the, tough side, because we're talking about some things that are really challenging. And
well, it's the podcast. New Hampshire has issues.
Ding, ding. But they cannot ignore us when we come together. I leave that room feeling like I'm helping families in a real meaningful way, and they may never know. And that's okay.
You're up there for the other moms in New Hampshire, for the families in New Hampshire, and also for younger you. You're up there for 23-year-old you.
I'm not going to cry, Liz.
But it's true. You're representing her from when she had a little one and was bringing the kiddo to work day to day.
In my role at Moms Rising and what I do, I want to, above all else, keep it real and say the things that people are saying. Because if I just go up there with the talking points and I say, New Hampshire families can't afford $15,000 a year for infant care, it's kind of we know. But if I say, hey, the moms are watching.
The moms are watching.
Do your job.
Also, moms are always watching. 1, 2, 3, eyes on mom.
So I said that, obviously, in that little speech I gave.
That's right.
And I'm making some signs. And I asked my kids, because I'm well, who better than the experts themselves? They liked all of them except the one that said the moms are watching. And when I asked them why, they're it's so creepy. Moms are always looking. So you're telling me even when I sleep, you know what I'm doing? And I'm just yes.
Yes.
Moms always know.
My mom once told me, because she found out something that happened at school. I don't even remember what it was, but she just said it. And I was how did you know that happened? She's I'm in the trees. I'm everywhere. And I was oh, are you? Because I was little. So I was
yeah,
my mom can climb trees.
Yep, those eyes in the back of our head, man.
Oof. Mm-hmm. I know that you've probably brought lots of moms with you to the State House, and it's not required that they get up and talk. But I also think it's helpful for them to see what that looks like. And
Yeah, there's energy in that room, especially when the chair of the committee kept kind of saying over and over again to have folks stop saying things that had been said before. And one of the main points for us to be there is to be on the record. So I really believe in repeating what we say. As a mom, I love to repeat myself. I have to tell my kids to go and pick up their socks 82 times a day.
I am once again asking you, take your shoes off and move it to the other side of the doorway so we don't have to walk through the shoes to get in the house.
Ready? Here's mine. Unpack your backpack. Unpack your lunchbox.
Bring the Chromebook out. What is for homework? Check. Yes, every day.
Every day.
We love repeating ourselves.
Love repeating myself. So I will do it at the legislature because it seems like they're not getting it, Liz. So let's just keep repeating ourselves.
Okay, I don't want to pivot too far away, but in the last episode, Kayla and I talked about, we made some jokes about book banning. Not jokes, they're not jokes.
Yeah.
But it sounds like we might be seeing some book bans here in New Hampshire. And I think your organization has been following those a bit more closely. What's going on with the book bans in New Hampshire?
Yeah. We had a couple bills this session, at least 2 that I know about. They say they're not book bans, right? They say that they're...
It's not great PR to call it a book ban if you're trying to ban the books. You don't want to call it a book ban, I think.
It looks bad, right?
Yeah.
So they say it's like they're like making sure that parents have procedures in place to disagree with school districts when there's material that they believe to be inappropriate. But what we really know, right, is that these bills aim to censor educators, criminalize those educators, and keep information from our students and our kids. We have a proud history of defeating these bills, but for the first time ever this year, both of the bills that we have right now for book bans have made it into their second body now, which has never happened before, and we're getting closer than ever. There are 2 bills. They are not the same, but the more extreme of the 2 would actually criminalize school teachers, school librarians, and school board members if they are found to be guilty of a criminal charge, folks. This bill opens the criminal code, and teachers and school librarians could face charges, could face fines. What we know is that the couple of instances that some really extreme parents are pointing to is that most school districts already have these reconsideration policies. There should be a process to talk about what our kids are seeing at schools, but it shouldn't come from someone who doesn't even live in the community. And it shouldn't be one person who's able, because both of those bills do that, by the way. You could be living anywhere in New Hampshire and go to a different school and say, I disagree with you having this book and do this, right? That's a problem. You don't even have a kid in that school.
Right. That's just somebody driving around the state being like, I don't like this group of people. And so I do not want books about this group of people being shown to any person in this school district, even though I'm not from here. She doesn't even go here, like very mean girls.
She doesn't even go here. I find it challenging because I've heard so many stories of people talking about experiences that they had when they were younger, where a book helped them get through a really challenging event or time in their life. The books that are in those schools and placed in those sections are for kids of those ages.
Right.
And I really do trust our library professionals in picking quality materials that help our kids learn and see different perspectives, because that's so important, right? For kids learning is seeing things they're not used to.
So those bills are still in play? They're still out there?
Still happening.
It's weird that in the Live Free or Die estate, we would think about banning books at all. All the books that I taught would have been probably banned in some way.
Yeah. And so what do you think it is about, like, you taught older kids? What do you think is really the crux of the issue here for families, for parents who are saying that these books need to be banned?
They do not want their young person to know about or talk about people who are different than their family in some way. And it could be about LGBTQ issues. The family could be worried that if my child knows about transgender people, then XYZ might happen. And it's like, so that's not how any of this works. And reading other people's stories helps build empathy, helps build, trying to understand other folks, which is an impossible task to do, right? Like, I can't ever know a full experience of someone of a different race than I am. I will never understand what it's like to be them because I cannot understand it. Reading stories can help approach understanding. Like, you can't ever fully understand it, but you can approach it in that way. I get so worried when people want to ban books because it feels too scary for them. And I'm like, what are you afraid of? Why is it that you do not want not even yours, but you want someone else's kid to not be able to read books about being gay or being a transgender young person? Like, what exactly are you afraid of? That worries me significantly.
Yeah. You said it so eloquently. I knew I could count on you for a really good explanation of what your thoughts were. I think you're so right. Like, approaching understanding is such an amazing way to think about it. Is like, we can't ever be there, but a book is a less scary way to be in someone else's shoes and to try to develop empathy around the situations that they find themselves in. That's important, right? That selflessness.
It was a professor in my undergraduate college. I was in an American literature class, and she was the one who said it. There was a male student in class who was talking about one of the books that we read. I think it was The Awakening. Speaking of moms, is about a woman who didn't want to have kids and does have children and is sort of like grappling with being a woman and a mom in that era. And so anyway, he said in class, he's like, this really helped me understand what it was like to be a woman then. And the professor was like, no, it did not, because you can never understand what someone else is going through if you do not share that identity. And that is okay. It's about getting a glimpse, getting a little bit of an insight to then approach your own world differently in a more nuanced way than you would have without knowing that person's experience.
Well said.
I'm so glad I'm not a teacher anymore. That's what I'm trying to say.
Honestly. But I'm like, can you just come and write my testimony against this bill for me? I'm like, Liz said it better than I ever could, folks.
Banning books in the Live Free or Die state seems so opposite of what we stand for as Granite Staters.
We know book bans and censorship are connected.
What is the one thing you would tell, whether it's a CrossFit mom or otherwise, what's the one thing someone can do right now as we approach summer in dealing with the childcare crisis or issues affecting moms in New Hampshire today?
Sharing your stories about what it is like to be a mom in New Hampshire right now. And I don't mean like the fluffy stuff. I mean the like, this is really what my life is like right now. I'm thinking about how I'm going to cook pork chops instead of red meat, like those kinds of things. Yeah. Because those real stories have power. And if we continue to share the real experiences and the real things that are going on, I think that it will be a good thing to point to if folks end up not listening to our stories. Moms can't keep holding everything together with duct tape and granola bars. We desperately need
little
help
packs of tissues in the pockets, ready to go.
Yeah. I always have a Tide to go stick as well.
So smart.
Because we know that moms can't show up in Concord every day to make an impact. You know, they can't be speaking at all the hearings that are happening during the workday, but really being real about what it's like to be a mom here in New Hampshire with the folks that you talk to a lot and trying to get some conversation started about sharing those stories. I think the more we talk about it, the better.
Kenz, thank you so much for being here, for boggling my mind with how much childcare costs and also that we haven't fixed it yet as a state. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you if they want to keep in touch and get involved?
I would love that. Please come and find us. You can find Moms Rising all over the internet. And we have a Facebook group. Moms Rising New Hampshire has a private Facebook group that you can come into, or at your local state house where I'll be screaming, the moms are watching.
The moms
until
are
the day
watching.
I die.
That's right. Yeah. The moms are watching.
Yeah.